So what's your name?
We'll go with Jack Faber. Jack is a cheeky jack of all trades, I guess. You know, well, jack of several trades. Because I dabble in music and acting maybe, and I'm qualified in architecture, and so I do interior architecture as well. I've been doing illustration. I've done paid illustration and graphic design since I was about 8. So yeah, a couple of different things, and just trying to be creative. And even if it's cliche, I guess, like trying to make the world a nicer place, you know.
What are like the most defining moments of your childhood, do you think?
My childhood? Oh, that's tricky. I mean, I suppose immigrating to England, because I was born in South Africa and then immigrated to England, and we had this competition for the home group or whatever, called Mr. Muscles, and we literally got like 1 day warning, you know. So that night I ran home, and I was like jogging around like in circles in my garden with like a rucksack full of toy cars, because that was the only weight I could think of. And I was like, I can if I will it, you know, if it's my willpower, you know. And I suppose that was a defining moment, because I actually somehow won it the next day, which is ridiculous, but I think I was kind of blessed even when I was 8. So I somehow won it, you know, by the grace of God, basically. And from then on, I realised, and you know, my mum helped me a lot since then as well, because mum probably said it even before that moment, but I realised then if I had the willpower and if I put my mind to it and think positively, then things can happen, you know, things can be achieved. And so that's a philosophy that I still to this day just try and live by, like just thinking positively. I mean, you can't, I mean, we all have, you know, like that Frank Sinatra song, we all get shut down and then we want to curl up in a ball, I think. And I certainly had that last year, you know, I was really down for a long time, but then at the start of this year I just made a kind of assertive, conscious decision to think positively and try and just focus on the things that I want to do and try and cut out all the things that I felt were negative, you know. At the same time, when it comes to general philosophy in life, I try and be quite vague, because I don't want anyone to actually misinterpret what I say, because I am easily misunderstood. I suppose there's a deliberate vagueness sometimes just to keep things up to interpretation, like an artist, I guess. And I do compare myself to my heroes, because that's how I progress and that's how I learn. If you don't have someone to look up to, my greatest ambition has always been to be able to just listen to something and then play it on the guitar. And I've been there for a while now, luckily. But again, you know, it's not. You have to have the natural God-given talent, but you have to work your ass off. You know, and I've worked my ass off to be where I am. So that's why I'd like to think I'm not arrogant. I'd like to just think I'm confident, because there is a fine line between confidence and arrogance, and I would hate to come across as arrogant, you know, because I do think arrogance and ignorance are like that, and that's where you get wars and stuff. And the reality is, in this life, the reason you get a lot of solo musicians, you know, and you'll probably know this yourself as a musician, is the only way to get things done. And you were saying this earlier about doing a lot of stuff yourself. But you know, if you want to get the job done, if you want to get it done the way you want it and you want it done well, and I do, because I'm quite meticulous about doing things well, I either do something as well as I can or I don't do it at all. I don't see the point in just half-assing your way through anything, you know? But, you know, there's lots of guys making music at the moment that are cool. I'm not going to be one of those cliched cool guys who goes, oh, there hasn't been anything good since '79. You know, I was born in '79, so I bloody hope so. Not to sound too vain or anything, but, you know, I'd like to think that what I will eventually produce, which I'm in the process of recording and stuff at the moment, will be progressive, but with still the kind of some of the flavour of when music was a bit more fun, which I think was in the sort of late '60s and '70s and through the '80s. And you know, music just got a little bit too serious maybe in the '90s. You know, grunge again was actually a philosophically very deep movement. You know, the problem for a lot of musicians, especially these days, is they just take themselves so seriously. And the worst thing I heard from an ex-girlfriend was, oh, I know people who make their own music and they don't listen to anyone else, they just listen to their own stuff. It's like, how can you possibly create if you only listen to your own stuff? Literally, it's like, you know, a snake that has his head stuck up his own ass, man. Because the only way I create is like a writer or anything else. Like, the only way you can be a good writer is by reading a lot of books. And that's a fact, you know? And the only way you can be a good actor is by studying and observing other people, not watching your own movies or anything, you know what I mean? So that's, again, a personal philosophy. I'm not saying there's like a rule that everyone should follow, but so far that's working for me, and constantly studying, you know, like constantly reading, you know. but it's very rare that I can sit down and write a 3-chord Rolling Stones hit or something, because it just, sometimes that stuff comes to you, like I did for Keith Richards, you know, in the middle of the night he wakes up and writes down, 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 which then gets covered by, I mean, who was it, Otis Redding? I can't remember who covered it, but anyway, I dabble in poetry, but I wouldn't dare to call myself a poet. And I suppose the highest achievement is being a comedian, actually, in my opinion. You know, being able to make people laugh would probably be the greatest thing, because that's pure joy, you know, when you see people laugh. And that would be the highest achievement. But I don't even want to go there anywhere near yet, because I haven't really materialised any music. Well, I've always kept pushing music, because really, I feel like music is my purpose in life, perhaps. In order to find the light, the true light, in order to get anywhere near enlightenment, like King Solomon, you know, would be to search for the truth, and that's actually the key word, is the truth. You know, and that's why I personally had to go into darker alleys and things that I wasn't comfortable with, because I had to find the truth for myself, you know, and to find the truth, you have to look at everything, and you have to read as much as possible, and that means reading about the occult, and reading about people like Aleister Crowley, and stuff like that, you know, and understanding that actually do what thou wilt does not mean do whatever you want to and there's no consequences. There's absolutely consequences. There's cause and effect to everything in life. And anyone who misinterprets that, like Scientology or the Church of Satan or damn creationists, please, you know, you're wasting the time, you're wasting my time, you're wasting everyone's time, and you're muddying the waters, because the truth is definitely also not the Roman Catholic Church. And I do talk about God and stuff, because that's ultimately what it comes back to. If you read Stephen Hawking, and the smartest guys eventually say there has to be some kind of conscious energy, and that's why I'm kind of doing my own thing more. And I'm trying to avoid being Jack Faber, the solo musician, because I think it's a little bit, you know, lame. Because there's no such thing as a solo musician. There's no such thing as a solo artist of any kind. I think it's the biggest lie that there is to go, my name is Jack Faber and this is my music. That's bullshit, man. My music is what everyone else helps me to make it. You know, like I'm not where I am without, you know, at least my parents helping me when I was a kid, without God-given talent, without other people helping me materializing it right now. You know what I mean? So there's no way it's ever just me. So for me to sell myself as the solo artist Jack Faber, even if I do 90% of the work, it's never purely me, you know. It would take me another 10 years to learn how to produce and engineer and do everything else, right? Properly enough to go, okay, this is commercially viable, let's release it. And I don't have time for that. I'm getting old, you know. I'm getting on. Life's too short. I only have one life, so I rely on other people. But at the same time, that's why it's taken me 8 years to get to a point of where I'm kind of, let's say, for all intents and purposes, you know, I am a solo artist, right? But I prefer to pretend that I'm in a cool band like Guns N' Roses, where it's all Led Zeppelin, where it was, you know, 4 pieces and all collectively became this awesome fifth element, right? And that's what made Led Zeppelin awesome, because every guy, and it was all balanced, they were all equal, they all did their own equal part. The reality is, in my music, I would have preferred it to be like that, but it's taken me 8 years of wasting a lot of time trying to do that, when, again, it comes down to finding your own truth and moving on with it. Knocking the door, and this girl stopped, and she kind of looked at me a bit weird, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "It's James Dean, right?" And I was like, you know, flattered, because James Dean would be like the biggest compliment. And then this weekend, I got the first time ever a group of like kids. I'm not even sure if they were teenagers, like early teenagers, yeah. They were like, "Hey man, you look like Elvis," and I was like, wow.
That's a stretch.
That's exactly a stretch, absolutely. And I was like, you know, I really don't buy that, and you're kids, so bless you. But James Dean is like, you know, if anyone actually thinks James Dean, that's probably as good as it gets. I mean, but I think I'm a little bit taller than James, a tiny bit,
Just a tad,
like a centimeter.